like to call the meeting to order. Please rise and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one
Recording
nation,
in progress.
indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Madam Clerk, would you please read the notice of the special meeting?
Certainly. Members of the Town Board, special Town Board meeting Thursday, September 19th, 2024 at 1 p.m. Please be advised that pursuant to Section 62 of Town Law, a special Town Board meeting will be held both in person in the Town Board Meeting Room, Southampton Town Hall, 116 Hampton Road, Southampton, New York, and via video conferencing on Thursday, September 19th, 2024 at 1 p.m. for the purpose of considering the following. Public hearing to consider the aquatic habitat restoration and non-point source abatement and control projects proposed for 2024 Community Preservation Fund 20% Water Quality Improvement Plan grant funding. Maria Z. Moore, Supervisor, dated August 22nd, 2024.
Thank you. Sunny, would you also please call the roll?
Supervisor Moore,
Present.
Councilwoman McNamara,
Present.
Councilman Iacilli,
Present.
Councilman Pell,
Present.
Councilman Scavone.
Present.
All right. Well, thank you. Let's move forward with our next round of applications. I know Jackie unfortunately couldn't be with us today, but she's on Zoom. Did you want to introduce the topic, Jackie?
Would you like me to read the public
Emily's
hearing
coming.
notice first?
Oh,
I'm going
thank you.
to read the public hearing notice first.
Oh, yes, of
From,
course.
okay. Public hearing number 1 to consider the aquatic habitat restoration and non-point source abatement and control projects proposed for 2024 Community Preservation Fund 20% Water Quality Improvement Plan grant funding.
Thank you. All right.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm sorry I can't be there in person, but you are in good hands. Emily Efstration actually is going to present for you today since I'm not, feeling well. But she has a presentation for you. But this is the second round of water quality grant hearings that we're having for you today. So this is the aquatic habitat restoration and the non-source abatement projects. So she has a little presentation for you just to introduce you to the projects.
Thank you, Jackie. We hope you feel better soon.
Thank you so much.
Good afternoon, Madam Supervisor and Town Council members. I'm Emily Efstration, Senior Environmental Analyst for the CPF Department assigned to Water Quality Matters. We are here today to review the remaining projects submitted to us requested water quality funding. Today's public hearing is to consider the aquatic habitat restoration and non-point source abatement and control projects proposed for the 2024 Community Preservation Fund 20% Water Quality Improvement Plan grant funding. The town local law authorizing 20% for water quality money was adopted in August of 2016. This round of water quality grants was opened in February of 2024 with eligible projects due March 15th, 2024. A total of 15 proposals for projects were submitted this year. The initial 7 were previously reviewed on September 5th, 2024. The following 8 proposals were received for consideration as aquatic habitat restoration and non-point source abatement projects under the general WQIP plan categories of restoration, reduction, and remediation. Please note that the total 20% maximum allocation for 2024 water quality projects is capped at $19,123,829. The first project for today is Tiana Bayside Habitat and Shellfish Restoration. Project type is restoration. Watershed is Shinnecock Bay. Project sponsor is Cornell Cooperative Extension Marine Program, and the requested funding is $196,210. Next is restoration of Rainer Fish Shack and install a Flepsy and Community Oyster Garden. Project type is restoration. Watershed, Mauritius Bay. Project sponsor, Mauritius Bay Project. And requested funding is $438,613.50. Next is Fresh Pond Road Stormwater Infrastructure Improvements. Project type is reduction and remediation. Watershed is Great Salt Pond and Fresh Pond. Project sponsor is Village of North Haven, and requested funding is $111,750. Short Beach Road, Pulls Creek Stormwater Runoff Bioswale Project. Project type is reduction and remediation. Watershed is Pulls Creek. Project sponsor is the Village of North Haven, and requested funding is $79,250. Next is 12 Sun Court, Bulkhead Permeable Reactive Barrier. Project type, reduction and remediation. Watershed, Shinnecock Bay. Project sponsor, Cornell Cooperative Extension of Suffolk County, and requested funding is $208,426. Next project is Riders Pond Stormwater Runoff and Rain Garden Project. Project type is reduction and remediation. Watershed is Riders Pond. Project sponsor is the Village of North Haven, and the requested funding is $34,510. Next is Ogden Pond, Quaquantuck Lane, and Howell Lane Rain Gardens. Project type is reduction and remediation. Watershed is Ogden Pond, Penniman Creek, and Quad Canal. Project sponsor is the Village of Quad, and the requested funding is $1,071,283.45. And the final project today is Living Shoreline Restoration. Project type, reduction and restoration. Watershed, Sag Harbor Cove. Project sponsor, Writers Retreat LLC / Steinbeck House Committee, and their requested funding is $14,000. I would like to thank the Water Quality Advisory Committee and Stephanie Davis, the Water Quality Advisory Chair, for their hard work and recommendations for this round of 2024 water quality project applications. I'd also like to thank Jacqueline Fenlon, the Director of CPF, who we saw joining via Zoom, for her continued help and support. So I guess at this point, if the applicant and representative for the Tiana Bayside Habitat Restoration Project would like to come up, please welcome you. Thank you.
All right, good afternoon, Supervisor Moore and Town Council members. It's great to be back and be considered for continuation of funding for the efforts that we have going on at our Tiana Bayside facility over in Hampton Bays. I have my colleagues with me today who head up the various elements presented in the proposal. That's before you, so they're going to go into a little bit more about their specific restoration methodologies and give a brief little update on where we're at with the past year's funding and where we hope to go with this year's funding. But I wanted to thank you again for considering us. It means a lot to be able to do this work in our community of Hampton Bays. We've done a lot to involve the community in this restoration work too, so that's an underlying element of all the restoration projects that you're going to hear about that are part of this proposal. So first I wanted to hand it over to Kate Rossi Snook, who's our aquaculture coordinator, and she heads up the spout and shell oyster reef and clam planting that we are proposing to do as part of this phase of work.
Hello, thank you for having us. At each of our stewardship sites across the East End that we manage, we have oyster reef restoration activities. And Tiana is really actually proven to be one of our biggest and most successful so far. Our initial planting that we did in 2022, I think that was planted in early November, and then it was last summer, so summer 2023, we snorkeled around to check on them, and it was so incredibly exciting and satisfying to see the growth of these oysters. When we plant these spout and shell oysters, they're going into the water at like 7 to 10 millimeters, which is like a fingernail biggest. They were full adult-sized oysters in less than a year. So the growing conditions at Tiana are really excellent for fostering that kind of reef structure that we're looking to create for that habitat restoration. It's really, we were able to get some images. surrounding, you just see barren sand, and then you get to the edge of the reef and you see all this wonderful structure and life, and it's supporting so many different crab species and macroalgae species. So that's really what we're hoping to continue to do. And a major step of that is to have a new remote setting tank set up down at Tiana. Different from the first attempt that we had there. We're actually going to be modeling it on the successes that we've experienced on Shelter Island. A very small tank, manageable, but produces approximately 100,000, a full tank. By the time we're seeding them, planting them, it's approximately 100,000 set live oysters on shell per tank. So it's really great way to get a significant number of oysters out into the water while also being very accessible to campers and community members to engage and get them to be able to see the whole process of growing these oysters. So we're very excited to get that set up down there. And then as far as clams, if you have any specific questions about clam seeding, we do generally just try to target our restoration clam seedings with our eelgrass restoration, because we acknowledge it's an ecosystem approach that the clams and eelgrass in particular have really positive relationship. And I guess I'll just take a note just quickly. I'm trying to get the messaging clear going forward with all of the East End towns that we work with. This is separate from and in addition to our town shellfish enhancement program. So the town shellfish enhancement program is the participating towns, Southold, Shelter Island, Southampton, obviously being the biggest chunk, pay towards us seeding individual oysters, hard clams, and when we have them, bay scallops in open harvest waters to maintain that harvest. So this is the restoration side of things. So that's why having that Tiana sanctuary designated as a sanctuary is so excellent, because the idea is they'll remain untouched, but when they spawn, they'll then have a greater likelihood of successful fertilization and therefore increased shellfish numbers. So that's that.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for having us today. My name is Harrison Toby. I'm the lead researcher for Cornell Cooperative Extension's Bay Scallop Restoration Program. We did a project, well, first off, we've been doing the Bay Scallop Restoration Program since 2005. It was massively successful up until 2019, when we saw the first mass die-offs, which resulted in catastrophic losses both in landings and the associated revenue with those landings. So for the last 5 years, we've been doing genetic studies, parasitology studies, trying to figure out what is driving these die-offs. And we now have a very good idea that it is likely driven by a new parasite that we discovered. It's an epicomplexan, similar to a malaria-type parasite. It's called Bay Scallop microsporidia. It infects all the tissues, and that infection grows and grows and becomes the worst in the summer months of their second year. So what we're seeing in the Peconic is that the scallops are surviving as a species. The issue is they're not surviving to be fished. So they're surviving until about August or September of their second year, and then they're all dying off prior to opening day of November 1st. So we've been running comparative field studies for the last few years, and what we have seen in conjunction with our genetic data is that there are certain groups of bay scallops. These are all the same subspecies. They're all the northern bay scallop, Argopecten, irradians. Nothing south of New York has been tested. But what we've seen is over time, the Peconic populations are reaching what we would call a genetic bottleneck. So they're losing diversity. So we think that loss of diversity is what's partially driving the die-off. So they have less genetic diversity to mitigate the effects of both the parasite and climate change. However, we saw over the last 2 years that the wild populations in Mauritius are slowly coming back. So we have data all the way to 2014. Nothing was reported until 2022, 2023. So this past fall, I went out in Mauritius and collected hundreds of adult scallops, which we then used as part of our spawning program this spring, with the hope that the genetics that they possess and the success we're now seeing in that fishery is because of a genotype that increases their tolerance to the parasite. So we're just trying to do what would be called stock enhancement. It's been done in the Chesapeake with clams and oysters. So that's kind of our goal right now, but we won't know until next year when we run field studies with them as adults. So what I'm trying to do with Mauritius is, or not Mauritius, sorry, with Tiana is mimic the successes we've had for the last 20 years in the Peconic in conjunction with the newer genetic and parasitology data we have now. So Kate touched on this. The best part about having a sanctuary is these animals can't be touched. Another great part about bay scallops is their spawning cycle is extremely predictable. So you plant them in year 1, they're spawning 2 to 3 times in year 2. So if they have those good genetics, their offspring can then matriculate them down over the years and hopefully build a more robust population. So what I'm doing this summer, I wasn't part of the project last summer, but in 2022 we also did something similar. I'm trying different gear types at Tiana. It's a little bit different of an environment. So we grow scallops at about 20 feet of water in Orient Harbor. We're restricted to about 8 feet. So we got to figure out new ways. So this summer I've tried 3 different gear types, different stocking densities, and really, really good survival and really, really good growth, similar to what we see in the Peconic. So it's very promising. So as long as we can take information we have from our other projects and apply it to this, I think we'll be very successful. So, any questions?
We hope so.
Yeah, me too.
That was a lot of
Thank you for
information.
doing that.
There, the sort of the proliferation of the parasite.
Yeah.
I know there have been discussions with Stony Brook University. I think you've presented.
Yeah, I work very closely with Boss and Milan, who does all the parasitology work. Yep.
Yes. You know, and there are questions as to what is sort of leading to the parasite's proliferation, whether it is the rising temperature, but also is this something also cyclical, like that, you know,
Well,
they've been
what's interesting is like we never tested for the parasite prior to the die-offs.
right.
But what's also even more interesting is our worst water quality sites have the lowest parasite intensity
Interesting.
and the highest survival.
Yeah.
So it's very complicated,
Yeah.
but you know, it's not going away. So we have to figure out if we can use this genetic data to mitigate the parasites, you know, impact.
Yeah.
Because we see, like I had scallops in Bullhead Bay, and it got up to almost 90 degrees and 0% DO. And that was our highest survival site because the parasite died off.
Yeah.
So a lot of weird stuff going on,
Yeah.
but you know, we're running tons and tons of lab studies as well. And those are like pilot scale, but they're very interesting. So we heat shocked a bunch of adult scallops, and the ones that were in the heat shock released the parasite, and we're completely naive the following week.
Yeah.
So we don't
So
want
it's like
climate
a-
change
so
to
it's like-
happen. But
So it's like a fever burning off a virus.
yeah, kind of, yeah. So, but we're doing a lot of work, putting our best foot forward. So.
Thank
Are
you.
you doing any studies on the cow nose ray?
So I did work with Brad Peterson's team, and they were trying to tag them, trying to find them. And, you know, you would see, if it was the cow nose rays, you'd see just debris everywhere if they were the ones eating the scallops. And we're seeing whole shells. They're called cluckers.
Right.
So they're open like that. So, like, they didn't get eaten by anything. They just died.
They just puked.
Yeah, their whole body up.
That's what you call it on the water.
Right.
Thank you.
Interesting. Thank you.
Thank you
You're
for
very
that
welcome.
information.
Last but not least, my name is Steve Schott. I'm the Habitat Restoration Specialist for Cornell, both shoreline work and eelgrass. So we've been working at Tiana for about 4 years. So 2020 we started, I believe, with funding from Southampton town to do vegetative eelgrass plantings using adult shoots. So we did, I think we put in somewhere between 5,000 and 8,000 shoots. Followed that patch, and this is all, we keep talking about Tiana and Sanctuary. The Southampton Town trustees put aside 5 acres for Cornell to use for shellfish and eelgrass restoration. So this is the area that we're working in. It's been designated, and basically there was nothing there but sand bottom. So we've been working with a clean slate. The initial plantings, adult shoot plantings in 2020 were successful. They survived. Our metric is for eelgrass. If a planting can get through, if we plant in the fall for adult shoots, if it could make it through to the following fall, through the heat of the summer, because again, climate change is not our friend. Eelgrass is very temperature sensitive. It does not tolerate high water temperatures for any periods of time, with the exception of Bullhead Bay, which is a strange location. The eelgrass does pretty well there, but there's mitigating factors. So we use adult shoot plantings to test sites because we have adult plants that are ready to go. We can install them right away and see results very quickly instead of having to wait for seeds to germinate and develop. And sometimes seedlings are a little more tolerant to conditions just because young plants and animals need to be a little more tough to get through their early stages. So we go directly with the adult shoots. If they can make it at a site through a full summer, the first full summer, and make it a year, typically that site is a good site. We also do have water quality monitoring data. We take temperature, we take light availability, we look at the sediments just to make sure they're all within optimal ranges. So this site at Tiana is a great site for eelgrass. And actually there are adjacent eelgrass meadows in that area, just not in that exact 5 acres. So we started out with a blank slate. Our adult plantings in 2020 did well. So we progressed to cover larger areas for eelgrass. You have to use seed because adult shoots putting in over an acre, a couple shoots every square foot takes a lot of shoots and a lot of time underwater. So eelgrass restoration typically moves when you're looking at large scale restoration to seed-based methods. And we have a few that we use, including broadcasting, just like you would do on your yard. We harvest the flowers in July from the existing meadows in Shinnecock. We bring the seeds back to our lab. We have them in flowing tanks with seawater. They drop their seeds out. We clean those up, and then in the fall we can go and basically, like you would, seed your lawn. The other method, which eliminates the necessity to actually bring it back to the lab, we can harvest them and then even the next day put them out in floating bags, nets, 1 by 1 foot nets that are attached to blocks on the bottom in a grid pattern over our restoration area. And the flowers break down and drop the seeds directly into the area, just like they would in an eelgrass meadow. And that's what we've been doing for the last 3 years in conjunction with the New York State DOS South Shore Estuary Reserve Blue Carbon Initiative eelgrass restoration program. So we've been leveraging state monies to help with the restoration of this site as well. So over the last 3 years with seed work, we've put out about 750,000 seeds over about 2.5 acres to 3 acres. And so you're looking at about 5 seeds per square foot, which is actually a pretty good density for eelgrass restoration. And what we've been seeing is the establishment of small patches, which is very common. That's how it works in natural meadows, where they'll establish small little colonies, and if those colonies can survive at that location, or if you could bolster them by reseeding over them and adding to them, they get to a certain minimal density that they can maintain on their own. And that's what we're starting to see, which was the goal of the project. So what we're hoping to do is continue to be able to add more seed and just basically really make a solid meadow as best we can by just doing the minimal work that we need. Is just helping this meadow by giving it more seeds and giving it more individuals. So that's where we are, and that's where we hope. The second part with the shoreline, there's been a lot of complaints, I know, about the gabions at Tiana. We had a meeting earlier this year about potential for moving those. Cornell does living shorelines. We would like to assess and potentially come up with a plan that would be enable us to submit to DEC with future fundings to actually complete the removal of gabions and restore the shoreline to a more natural state that is more user-friendly to the public. But in the meantime, what we would like to do is, in preparation, because it does take a couple of years to kind of build up, we like to propagate our own plants. So we would collect seeds from Dune Road and other locations in Southampton for the salt marsh cordgrass that would be used for the restoration, and start to propagate that at Tiana. We already have a native plant nursery for other coastal plants. This would be down by the shore where it could get flooded, and these plants would be growing basically in a nursery along the shoreline where it gets salt water, so that they're basically growing in their natural habitat. We would like to basically start that and start to propagate and get enough plant material so that when we do get permission and funding to do a shoreline project there, we already have our plants set. And what we also hope is to get the community to come in and help with propagation, so that there's a buy-in from the community to help with this restoration of the shoreline. So that's basically the projects.
We have had conversations with Aram Tertunian about the gabion removal, and I know he's in communication with the Army Corps of Engineers about it. So you should, it would be helpful if you would communicate
Yep.
with him and work together on that.
After our meeting, I provided Aaron some information from the work we had been doing, so that he had that,
Okay.
in his back pocket, talking with the Army Corps, so they knew what we've done with the eelgrass restoration offshore, and then plans that we might have had for doing more of the restoration, increasing our restoration nursery onshore for this.
Steve,
But-
we did have them at a work session, so you could, dig that up and find it. You probably might want to take a look at what he is proposing,
Okay.
which is a significant amount of
Yeah.
lagoon kind of jetty.
I had a
Interesting,
side
engineering
discussion with
design.
him as well about
Uh-huh.
what he foresaw, but piecemeal taking out sections just didn't seem like it was going to work. It's actually probably more work than removing it wholesale and doing a larger scale structural project to address the issues. But yeah, we're not physical. I'm not a physical oceanographer or an engineer, so I deal with the plant aspects and the natural processes. So that's where my strength is. Whenever we've had need for that, we go to experts like Aaron. This is someone who knows how to, engineer these projects, especially the hardened structured aspects. And again, the gabions are a special case. Those are probably some of the most substantial structures on the shoreline in the East End. I don't think ripping them out is going to be easy.
Mm-hmm.
So, that part is going to take some engineering so that we do the minimal amount of damage to the shoreline, removing them, so that we're not starting at a more of a deficit
Mm-hmm.
on the shore. So,
Part of why we started looking at it was the problem that the horseshoe crabs were
Mhm.
having with the gabions. And but somebody contacted me afterwards and said that living shorelines are problematic for horseshoe crabs also.
they can be.
Do you know anything about that?
Yes. So what you need to do is leave pathways. So sort of like the day that we were meeting, Parks was trying to put snow fencing as a kind of a ramp over the rocks to enable the horseshoe crabs to get over. You do the same thing with shoreline. You plan in open areas, and the way you plan the open areas is so that there's no straight paths that can increase erosion in those areas. So things are kind of on angles and things. As long as you leave openings and exits, however they're designed for the horseshoe crabs, as long as they can get up behind that marsh grass, lay their eggs, and then not be trapped and get back out, they should be fine. Because they do that in natural marshes as it is, that have solid marsh areas. So, it's a lot easier to get over a grass that bends than a 2-foot high wall of rock that you don't really have good purchase over.
Mhm.
So either way, and that's definitely something, and I've had discussions with Dr. Matt Stefani, who heads the Horseshoe Crab Project for Cornell and helps with DEC's monitoring program on Long Island. And we've talked about that because do I need to start developing in any of our shoreline projects anywhere these little escape routes and take that into account? So so that's a discussion that's
And the
actually
answer
been,
was yes.
yes.
Yeah.
The thing is how big and what the design is, and that's going to be site specific. So, but that is now on the checklist of things that has to be included in the
Good.
process.
I'm glad to hear it. Thank you.
Any other questions?
Not a question, but since you're standing at the podium, I wanted to thank you. You've come out to Long Beach, Boston Memorial Beach, in between North Haven and Noyak, to do native grass restoration along with teams of volunteers. So I want to appreciate you and Cornell Cooperative for coming and working with our Parks Department to do that.
We love working with that community because we have such turnout. In most cases, we said it, I think we're allowed 25 volunteers, and we have more than that show up every time.
Mhm.
So we get the work done quickly. So their enthusiasm and buy-in from the community is great out there. So we love doing that project.
Thank you. It's taking.
It is. I was down once this summer so far. So I always worry because we plant plants for the shorelines in the wintertime when they're dormant. So winter storms can impact them because they're not really rooted yet. So I think the last planting we did was in March.
I think so.
Yeah, March or early April, which is a good window because they're almost ready to anchor themselves. But yeah, that project's been looking pretty good. And we thank you for your support.
Thank you.
Very good.
Thank you very
Well,
much.
thank you all for coming in. Very informative.
It's a very worthwhile project.
Agreed. All right, the next project to be presented is the restoration of the Rainer Fish Shack and to install a Flupsy and community oyster garden. Is anyone here from the Mauritius Bay project?
I just wanted to let you know that they will be presenting via Zoom, so it should be Dwight from Mauritius Bay Project. If you could let him into the Zoom, please.
And it's worth noting that the restoration of the Rainer Fish Shack is being done by CPF. This is the grant for the Flupsy and the Community Oyster Garden.
Correct.
What do you mean, Cindy?
It's
the
because
water quality
that title
money?
makes it sound like the grant they're requesting is to restore the Rainer Fish Shack.
No, it's
We're
only,
doing that through CPF.
yeah, this is only for
The
The
Flupsy,
Flupsy and the
Flupsy.
Outballer.
and,
not the
and
restoration
equipment,
of the fish
They're
shack.
gonna use the fish shack for, I'm sure they'll go over it, but they're gonna use the fish shack
For restoration.
for educational purposes.
Okay. Oh, there-
There.
look at these two guys.
Speaking of the devil,
Hello.
sound.
Can't hear you.
I believe you're muted, Aaron.
Yeah, yes, we're just waiting for Dwight Surgan to join us. He's going to be giving the presentation. If he's online, could you please let him in?
I did see him as a participant, Dwight Surgan.
Mhm.
Jackie says she doesn't see him as a participant.
No,
She
she
sees
saw him.
Oh, she did.
I do see him, and I just put in the chat to say that we're ready for him. The host is saying that he keeps declining to become a panelist.
Tag
Okay,
you
we're
in.
the same way. Next.
While Dwight is sorting out his technological challenges, Jim and I can start this off. We want to really thank the board for hearing us today and to talk about a really exciting project at the Rainer Fish Shack. Truly an iconic place. For those of you who have been there, it's instantly iconic, and if you haven't, I strongly recommend it. It's just an absolute time transport back to an era, long before any of us were around. Beaver Dam Creek has a rich maritime history. It was a location. If you look on an aerial photo, you'll see there's quite a few docks littered on both sides of the shoreline, and they go back literally hundreds of years. Beaver Dam was used as a transshipment point for the fish, shellfish, and agricultural products that came from the East End and were shipped as far as New York City when the waters were the primary transportation arteries. And, the Merchants Bay project is really thrilled to be a part of bringing the Rainer Fish Shack into the restoration of Merchants Bay through the growing and planting of oysters, and through the education of not just our youth, but all ages as to the importance of our marine environment, and equally as important, teaching them how to become part of the solution in the marine environment. So our proposal is pretty straightforward. It's divided into two parts. Part one is the installation of a floating upweller system, and I believe that the board is familiar with those devices. And the second part is the development of the Rainer Fish Shack as an educational center. And these are, two pieces that really complement each other. Merchants Bay project has had a dozen years of experience with growing and seeding oysters. This year we'll have grown 700,000 oysters, and over the last 12 years we've grown and planted over 5 million oysters. And if you've been in Merchants Bay recently, you might notice that the water quality is exceptional. And we believe that a large portion of that is due to the oysters cleansing the bay, because each adult oyster can filter 50 gallons of water a day. So creating a location where we can grow more oysters is really important for the bay, but the process by which we do it and the way that we involve the local community in doing that is really what makes this project special, because we will not just be growing them merely to put them into the bay, but we will be creating a facility where members of the community can participate in this hands-on operation to learn how to grow the oysters, how we put them out, and to help us refine and enhance what we're doing. So with that overly expansive introduction, Jim, if there's something you'd like to add?
No, I think you've covered it all. This is a really exciting project. It's kind of the next step for the Merchants Bay project, and we're looking forward to the possibility of being funded to take this next step.
Hey, Aaron, can you just go down through how you're going to spend the money and what a flupsy is? Because I know what a flupsy is, and some people out here knows what a flupsy is, but there's probably a few people on the board here that has no idea what a flupsy is. And for $500,000 for a flupsy, I want to kind of figure what you're buying. Is it salaries or it's all equipment?
Thanks, Trustee Pell, Councilman Pell, sorry.
That's okay.
A
lot of slides.
So a flupsy is a floating upweller system, and this was a device that actually was invented in Suffolk County by the Cornell Cooperative Extension. And what it does is it has a pump system that brings nutrient-rich water into barrels that are filled with baby oysters. And oysters feed on that algae and grow quite rapidly. In fact, they will grow to a suitable size that they can be placed into Merchants Bay independently without any additional protection within one growing season. And so a floating upweller is exactly that. When you look at it, it's just a big floating dock, usually 12 or 15 feet by 12 or 15 feet. But when you open it up, it's filled with barrels full of oysters. And so in order to achieve that, we have, number one, a capital cost to build the flupsy, and number two, an ongoing cost to provide the services necessary to seed the oysters, grow them, and then put them out into the bay. And I see that Dwight is online now. Dwight, I think that you have the numbers. If you would please run through that for the board, I'd appreciate it.
Dwight, I believe you're muted.
Hi, can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay, I apologize. First time zooming into the town board meeting. Obviously some kinks to work through, but I got dropped when I tried to join the panel, so I apologize. But I'm in the quiet sanctity of my car. I will try to pull up some of those figures that Aaron was talking about. What was the what were there any questions? I kind of joined in late, so I'm not sure what we're up to.
How are you
So
going to
Aaron,
spend
go ahead.
$5 million to break down? One flopsy and a crane, a couple of solar panels. I built 3 flopsies my entire life, maybe 4, and I didn't spend that much money. Of course, it was 20 years ago, but and I had a crane on it, and I see that it's a lot of money. I want to see how you spend the money.
Well, some of these figures we had
Well,
discussed.
let me jump
Yeah.
in on that. So,
Yeah, thanks.
Councilman Pell, so what's happened in Flupsy design in the last, actually in our 12 years of working with it, is number one, we've gone from a all wooden construction to an aluminum superstructure. And it makes the Flupsies much more durable and sustainable. The second thing that we've run into is that as the oysters grow, they become very heavy. And you literally, you have to be somebody like Dwight in order to be able to lift the barrel up out of the water. So, in working in conjunction with Cornell Cooperative Extension, they've actually developed an overhead gantry crane that will be able to lift these barrels up, assisted with an electric winch, which will be solar powered. So that's the reason that we're looking at what you correctly point out to be a pretty substantial number to construct the Flupsy. But that is based upon the cost estimates that we got from Cornell, and we believe them to be accurate and competitive.
So are you working with Cornell on this?
Yes, Cornell provides us with the oysters themselves as the spat that we use to fill our Flupsy, and they also provide technical training to us as to how to operate it. So they've been our technical partners in growing oysters for the last dozen years.
And they're going to be providing us with the materials too for assembling, not only the Flupsy but also the barrels, the motor, essential parts to the Flupsy for it to operate.
And I believe in the packet that we submitted to you, there was a worksheet that contained a list of all the various pieces that we need to run one of these Flupsy operations. As you might imagine, things break, and we have consumable products like personal protection equipment like gloves, for example, that because oysters are pretty sharp, that we go through. So that is those are the costs associated with the actual Flupsy, and then we have costs that are associated with the that are associated with the education center. So the way we've broken it out is that we have basically a fish shack manager, and they're in charge of all of the operations, the educational aspect of it, and the Flupsy part of it. And then beneath them, we have technicians that will service the Flupsy and will provide educational materials and assist the fish shack manager in executing the educational components. So what we're looking at is really kind of 4 different educational opportunities. One of which is getting volunteers from the community to come down and to help service the Flupsy and learn about how it operates and how oysters help the bay. The second part of it is sort of a camp type situation, which would be more or less a full day where students of all ages could come down and just learn about the Flupsy and participate in a smaller way in helping us maintain and execute the operation. The third opportunity is really focused on the local school system, which is really to hold lectures and classes within the fish shack and on the beautiful surrounding grounds, where we can give them that hands-on appreciation. And these would be lectures that might last an hour or a few hours, something like that. And the other is kind of a wider community events type operation, where the people who live in and around Beaver Dam Creek and the greater Murchison Bay area can come and join us and just for a celebratory type of educational opportunity. Meet their neighbors, learn about how shellfish are important, and also learn about the history of Beaver Dam Creek and Murchis Bay, which is a tremendous, rich and vibrant, robust history.
That's all well and good.
Hold on. Sorry, I just wanted to ask Stanley, can you forward the board, because we're not awarding any of this money today, could you forward the board the breakdown of the pricing so that we can look at it?
We can forward the board
Thank you.
That's what I was going to ask.
Oh, yeah.
He has not said anything about
Yeah,
it. He just beats around the bush.
Absolutely. That's all in our application form.
Yeah, but unfortunately, we didn't get the full applications before the meeting. We just have summaries, so we don't have all that.
We don't have that
information.
That's what
but
we
we'll
asked
get
for.
it. Thanks.
Okay.
Yeah.
And to their benefit, we don't usually need that for all of them, but there's some that we have questions on.
Yeah, like this is a lot of money.
Yeah, if you want me to speak to this now, I can.
Please do. Stephanie's here. She's going to clarify some things.
Don't forget, you also, besides the gloves, you need main pants and boots. Sometimes big boots.
I think it's
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
Bellwether
Yeah.
gear.
We went over the cost estimate in detail. We've also had some questions because some of the people on our committee are familiar with these. Again, as Stephanie did as the chair of the Water Quality Advisory Committee. Basically, we saw this as kind of two parts for this. First, there's the capital cost for actually the FLUPC itself, which is about $42,000. And again, it's not the old wooden construction. It's a more substantial. And then there's associated the PPE, the personal protective equipment, and things like that go with it. And those costs, which are an ongoing cost, are carried over 5 years because these projects need to be sustained for 5 years. It also includes the oyster seed, the annual purchase of oyster seed to run this project. It also includes cleaning supplies and just incidental equipment such as hoses and barrels and crates, which some of them are permanent and some of them, get lost in the process, as I'm sure you know. Also, there is the cost of utilities to run this project at the fish house. That's included in the proposal, as well as the salaries for, it looks like several people on a part-time basis with different roles in the project. The total annual salary cost is about $55,600 and some change, which after a 5-year period, that adds up to about half or a little bit more than half of the cost of the project is for the salaries. I think the other thing is there's some educational aspects of this project that are being carried as capital costs. For example, the touch tank and the touch screen TV and the diorama and some of the other things that are going to be added to the fish house as part of the educational program. And that's as part of the capital costs. Those are not very significant compared to some of the other costs, but they're in there as well. We viewed it as an all-inclusive cost for 5 years of running this program.
Okay, thank you. Can you give us a copy of that later?
Yes, absolutely. It will be sent to you.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
I also just wanted to mention, sorry to interrupt, that all the applications are available on the town website too. So if you guys want to peruse any of those cost estimates, they are on the town website for anyone to view.
Thanks, Jackie.
Thank you.
All right. Does anyone else have any other questions, or is there more to the presentation, Aaron?
Supervisor, I'd also just like to thank you and the board for hearing us remotely. It's unfortunate that our schedules did not allow us to be there in person, and we really appreciate the opportunity to present this to you, and thank you very much for that.
You're welcome. We're glad we have the technology to accommodate it.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Okay, we'll be in touch. Thanks. All right, so the next presentation is for Fresh Pond Road Stormwater Infrastructure Improvements, North Haven Village. Who's here to present that project?
Wow.
afternoon, Supervisor Moore, board members, and members of the CPF. Thank you for considering the water quality improvement projects from the Village of North Haven. My name is Terry Diat. I'm a village trustee in the village, and I lead the Water Quality Improvement Committee. And with me today is Rick Wisniewski, our village engineer from the Rayner Group. The Village of North Haven has 3 applications before you today. And I'd like to start actually by saying that these applications, which will address improving the water quality in 4 of the important ponds and creeks in North Haven, comprise just one strategic component of our water quality improvement plan. The other elements of our plan include partnering with Dr. Gobler's lab on the Baconic Blue Carbon project to address improving the water quality in the bays surrounding North Haven. This winter, they piloted growing kelp in 3 sites off of the shoreline of North Haven. And we feel that we can have a greater impact on the bays by forging partnerships than we can have by doing projects ourselves in such a small village. And we have a continuing effort to encourage our homeowners to install IA septic systems through legislation and through education on the environmental impact and financial assistance available. And the most recent report from Suffolk County Health Department shows that we have 13% of our homes have installed or applied to install IA systems. So we've made good progress, but a long ways to go. And through education, we're encouraging lower fertilization. Through legislation, we're requiring wetland buffers as well. And lastly, for the second year, we're conducting water quality testing in 6 key water bodies in North Haven with Dr. Gobler's lab to understand our data and key areas of risk and opportunities. So we do have a comprehensive program in North Haven. So the 3 projects before you today that we will discuss are the infrastructure projects that we feel will have an important impact on our water bodies in North Haven. So the first one is the Fresh Pond Road Stormwater Infrastructure Improvement Project. So Fresh Pond Road runs alongside 2 large and important ponds in North Haven, Fresh Pond and Great Salt Pond, both of which have inlets to Sag Harbor Bay. And this project proposes to install 9 Fabco storm basin filtration devices in the existing stormwater catch basins and leaching structures, which will sequester road water and stormwater runoff contaminants. So as the stormwater enters the storm basin, the water will pass through a cartridge that filters and treats it at the source. And the cartridges will seek to reduce total nitrogen by at least 40% and phosphorus by at least 50%. And in the 2023 water quality testing that Dr. Gobler's lab did for us, both Fresh Pond and Great Salt Pond were shown to have high levels of nitrogen, fecal coliform, and low dissolved oxygen, and poor flushing in both of the ponds. So we believe that this project is an important infrastructure improvement for the stormwater runoff for these 2 large ponds in North Haven. So what questions can we answer for you on this project?
How often hi Terry, how are you? Thank you for coming, and I appreciate the work that you are doing in the Village of North Haven on water quality. You're certainly a leader there. How often do the cartridges need to be changed, and is that something that the village is going to maintain?
Yes, so that is something that our highway department in North Haven, which is 1 person, will be able to change. And I believe it's 2 times a year, or is it 3 times? 2 times a year they will be changed. Yeah.
Thank you.
It looks like it's about $12,000 each to retrofit the existing physical structures to accommodate the filters.
Yeah, so there's a storm basin model there's in the square catch basins. It's a 2x4 aluminum structure that just gets placed in there that has 3 holes for the cartridges, and then the circular ones, it's just a 22-inch diameter, same material, aluminum, with 1 cartridge hole. So that'll just be done once, and then twice a year after that, the cartridges just pop out and you replace them.
And then regular maintenance, because leaves get in there, but your highway department is prepared to do the cleaning out of the filters.
To clean the drains themselves,
Yeah.
yes. We'll clean the drains before we do the installation, and then we'll do the regular cleaning of the drains.
Okay. All right. I don't have any other questions about that.
No, I
think
think it's a
that's-
good thing.
Yeah.
No
We've done
questions,
before.
but
Going to be an ongoing cost.
a comment. Both Great Fresh Pond and Gray Pond lead out to the southern part of Shelter Island Sound, as does your next application, and that is an impaired water body as per the town of Southampton. So,
So shall I go on to the next
Yes,
one?
Yeah. please do.
Yes, please.
Okay. So the next application is Short Beach Road and Poles Creek Stormwater Runoff Bioswale Project. So I'm sure that all of you have driven past this area many times. So it's after passing Long Beach, when you're driving towards North Haven, there is a short stretch of road there, right, where you see Sag Harbor Cove on the right-hand side. On the left-hand side, you'll see Poles Creek. And there's a small piece of property that is owned by North Haven Village. And so we are proposing to install a bioswale retention area on the road shoulder, and also put a Fabco storm basin filtration device, the same type of device, into the existing storm drainage there. And the water quality testing also conducted in 2023 by Dr. Gobler's lab in Poles Creek also noted elevated levels of pollutants in Poles Creek. So, and as you all know, Short Beach Road is a very heavily trafficked road with about 1.2 million vehicles over 12 months traveling that road. So the proposed bioretention area will contain erosion control matting, native plantings, and specialized soil mixes to treat, absorb, and convey stormwater runoff before entering Poles Creek. And the plantings will consist of Long Island native plants. And the project will use the natural topography of the road right-of-way to direct the stormwater to the bioswale area. And the Fabco filtration devices will reduce the same nitrogen by 40% at least, and phosphorus by the same 50%. So this infrastructure project as well will be a step in the right direction to improve the water quality in Poles Creek.
Thank you.
So questions on this project?
yeah, currently is the runoff directed right into the bays there?
So this is a very interesting area. So on the other side of the street, which is Southampton town, there is paving, asphalt paving, that is directing the water
It's
right
still like
into
that.
Sag Harbor Cove. And when we were looking at this area, we initially thought that was town of Southampton, and we were going to submit a project for that. So we would actually maybe next year love to work with town of Southampton to do something on the other side of the street, and just a bit further down from this area where we're proposing the project, it's also directing water right into Poles Creek, which is town of Southampton. So there's an opportunity to collaborate to do more in this area. We're coming forward this application year for just the project on the village of North Haven property, but there's absolutely opportunity to do more work in the town of Southampton area, in this area that would impact Sag Harbor Cove, as well as do incremental improvement in Poles Creek area and even Noyak Bay area.
That is a town of Southampton. It's a county road.
It's county
60,
road
yeah.
area as well,
But
yeah.
it is town of Southampton.
Yeah,
I used to
so,
catch snappers there as
So
a
if some
kid.
folks would like to collaborate with us, we'd be happy to collaborate more in this area. But this,
I remember
this would be
those
a
drainage.
start. This project is a start in this area.
Okay. I was reminiscing. I used to catch snappers there as a kid.
Yeah,
I
it's
remember
quite,
those
it's
drainage.
actually
Boy.
quite egregious the way it's been, the roadway has been
Is everyone okay with
paved
them
in that area.
doing riders
Yep.
until?
Yep. You could go on to the next
Yeah,
one.
and what's your
Okay,
third
shall we skip to
program?
the next one? Yeah. So the third project is around Riders Pond, Stormwater Runoff and Rain Garden Project. So Riders Pond is a smaller pond, and it's across the street and immediately adjacent to the 3 parcels that are a combined 25 acres of land. They've previously been preserved by CPF that are known as Silly Field and our new Lovelady Park. And actually, Riders Pond is it's a much-loved small public area of North Haven where children have ice skated on the pond for years in the winter. And you might have even found Councilman Schiavone skating there in his younger years. So the project proposes to install a rain garden at the corner of Barclays Drive and Sunset Beach Road to address stormwater runoff into Riders Pond. And similar to the prior project, it will be a bio-infiltration area that will reduce pollution by filtering the road runoff while creating a naturally aesthetically pleasing view. And the plantings will consist of Long Island native plants and will contain erosion control matting, native planting, and specialized soil mixes to treat, absorb, and convey stormwater runoff before entering the pond. So what questions do you have on this project?
I just have a question on this one and the previous one. You're getting matching funds for those?
We do not have matching funds
Okay.
For these projects.
I think the matching funds were for the DEC.
Oh, for DEC permits, yes.
Okay.
For DEC permits,
Got it.
I'm sorry.
That's okay.
Yes.
Thank you.
I stand corrected, yes. Okay, well, thank you.
No,
We
I think
appreciate
this
we
is,
appreciate your
Well,
consideration.
thank you for these initiatives.
Thank you very much.
Very
Yes,
important, and we
they
appreciate
are-
the effort.
They're very important projects for our small village, and we
Mhm.
appreciate your consideration.
Helps a lot of
Everything
people.
counts. All right, the next project is 12 Sun Court Bulkhead Permeable Reactive Barrier, and that's Cornell Cooperative. Hello?
Hello, my name is Dr. Molly Graffam from Cornell Cooperative Extension. I've been leading the groundwater research and work at Cornell since about 2020. And today I'm talking about the proposed bulkhead permeable reactive barrier at 12 Sun Court. This barrier is anticipated to remove somewhere between 83 to up to 490 pounds of nitrogen per year. Those numbers are based on a few preliminary samples that we took offshore of the bulkhead, and we plan on honing in on that exact number based on the site characterization that is included in this proposal. Essentially, this proposal is expanding on what we learned and implemented in Shinnecock Bay at the Hampton Hills Association. We initially had a project funded that was funded by Southampton CPF in 2018, and this bulkhead permeable reactive barrier was installed in 2020, and we've been monitoring it ever since in collaboration with Stony Brook Center for Clean Water Technology. That system worked extremely well, and thanks to your support, that was like the first bulkhead permeable reactive barrier. It was the first of its kind. So we learned a lot with that project, and we've been monitoring it over the past few years. It continues to remove 60 to 100% of the nitrogen entering the barrier, which equates to about 300 pounds per year that's being removed before it enters Shinnecock Bay. So we do anticipate that this system, the proposed system, will be similar to that. It's just south of the existing bulkhead permeable reactive barrier at the Hampton Hills Association, so it's in a very similar area. And the Hampton Bays community, it's a large residential community, and all of that groundwater is moving towards Shinnecock Bay. And this is how groundwater nutrients end up entering the surface water, is this movement of groundwater from inland into our local bays and estuaries through this process called submarine groundwater discharge. So essentially what the permeable reactive barrier does, it intercepts that nitrogen enriched groundwater and doesn't allow that nitrogen to enter the bay. The PRB, you can think of it like a sponge. It attracts water and promotes the microbial conversion of nitrate to nitrogen gas. Nitrate is the nutrient, and in excess it is a contaminant, and nitrogen gas is completely harmless. It makes up our atmosphere and we're breathing it in right now. So it's removing that nutrient and contaminant into a gas form. The reason why we're proposing to do this bulkhead permeable reactive barrier is because our previous project was very successful. Also, this bulkhead at this specific property is failing. The property owner is planning on replacing it. It's currently a wooden bulkhead, and it's going to be replaced with a PVC material, which is going to last for quite a while. So this installation, by installing the PRB on the landward side of the bulkhead, it provides an environmental benefit to a structure which currently just helps prevent erosion, but it doesn't have an environmental benefit. It also provides cost savings since the equipment that will be there on site already to install the bulkhead, that same equipment will be used by the bulkhead installer to install the permeable reactive barrier. So this project is for the site characterization, the design, the installation, and a little bit of maintenance and some post-installation sampling just to confirm that the PRB is functional. Really the only way to determine that it's functional and that it was installed properly is for us to take a few samples after it was installed. So a little bit of monitoring. The great thing about these types of systems is that they're completely passive. So they have no moving parts once they're installed. They require very little maintenance. And these systems, permeable reactive barriers, have been used for decades for other purposes. And the innovative part here is installing them right along the shoreline and behind bulkheads. But they've been in use for decades in other areas, and they've been shown to last for decades. So there's upfront installation costs, but then they continue to work for a very long time with very little maintenance because they just use natural materials and they rely on the natural flow of groundwater through them. So at this site, we're going to be somewhat modifying the design that was used at the Hampton Hills Association. We're going to try to use more of a funnel and gate approach, which is a slightly different approach that will hopefully allow more water to come in from the sides of the barrier, and it will involve less trenching. So that's we're improving upon the design that we used at the other site. And I would just take any questions that you have.
There's no filters that have to get cleaned?
The barrier itself, you can kind of think of it like a filter, but it doesn't get replaced. It just stays there and continues to work for decades. So the barrier itself is composed of wood chips and gravel that are locally sourced, and that wood chips provide a source of food or carbon for microbes, and those microbes consume that over decades.
How deep does it have to be installed? I'm looking at your schematic here.
Yeah, so the bulkhead that was installed at the Hampton Hills Association went to about 14, the panel was about 14 feet. So about half of that goes below the sediment and about half of that was above that you could see from the surface. So what we did previously was install holes in the bulkhead, drilled holes, and we made sure that there was no structural, the structural integrity of the bulkhead is preserved because everything was installed below the sediment. But essentially that allows water to flow through the bulkhead to allow treated water.
Call them scuppers.
Oh yes, there's different types of ways to allow water to flow through a bulkhead, and we're actually looking at a few different ways we might modify that for this one as well. There's existing types of materials that allow water to flow through a bulkhead.
Obviously, it's an imperative of all of our local municipalities to remove contaminants from our bays and our waterways, and I know Cornell Cooperative they do great work in that area. With respect to your project, since you are monitoring, are you willing to also provide copies of results to the town as well as you continue on through the project?
Absolutely. I mean, Cornell, one of our main promises is mission is education and outreach. Great. So I've given presentations to this board before. I plan to continue to do that. It would include a final report after everything is done, and definitely we would be reporting back to you on the results.
Excellent. Thank you.
That's a good idea. I remember when we approved the first one, and I like PRBs, and I'm happy to hear that it is working well. And so I remember that was the first one, and we would like to put more in.
Thank you. Yes, thank you for that support for that initial project. Again, it is working really well. And Cornell has now been working with other East End towns. We have some projects in the town of East Hampton, and we've also been expanding into the town of Brookhaven. But you guys funded that first initial project here, and it's been a huge help for us to build on what we learned with that system.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Very good.
Thank you
Thanks
very
so
much.
Thank you. All right, the next project is Ogden Pond in the village of Quogue. And Mayor Trudeau called and said that he was unfortunately unable to be here today, but Rusty's here, right?
Yeah, so I'm Rusty Schmidt. I'm with Nelson Pope and Voorhees, and thank you very much for allowing me to present. And the mayor thought he might be able to get on Zoom, but did he not show up?
I just reached out to the mayor, but I don't see him as a panelist or attendee yet.
No problem. No problem at all. I can cover it. We at MPV and Nelson Pope have looked at the village of Quogue as a whole, and looked at the entire village to do a water quality improvement plan. And then from that, we chose 3 projects that are kind of the biggest bang for our buck, or low-hanging fruit, to go after first. And all 3 of these projects are showing large positive impacts to Quogue Neck, Ogden Pond, and Penniman Creek, which are all impaired water bodies. So that's where our focus became. And then just to give you a quick update, because I know you like that, the project that you funded last year with along Old Country Road, that is going to construction in the next few weeks. It's up for bid right now. So that one will be built shortly, and that was the water that was going into the, what's the pond right there by Quogue Wildlife Refuge? Ice Pond?
Ice Pond.
Ice Pond, yeah. And then for this project, we did go after three projects. All 3 of them are multiple rain gardens and along the right of way. We're trying to capture all the water that's currently going directed right into those 3 water bodies. We are installing, and we have a little bit of design work to get to final construction. We've done the conceptual work. Now it's the design work, and then construction. And we'll hopefully have a couple of them built first thing in the spring, if approved.
It's nice to see. I remember last year when the mayor came in with his projects. Stephanie can attest to this, and it was kind of like, we want to do this here and this here and this here, and there was really no. Yeah. And it was all well intentioned, but it was lacking the specifics in design engineering.
Yeah, and that's what he at that meeting brought me aside and asked if I could give him a hand. So we helped him get the country garden or country road projects up to snuff. We've been working with the Quogue Wildlife Refuge as well, so it is a cooperative because it's going to impact their parking and their front, and then also so that was that part, and then we've taken that ideal and went with these 3 projects. One is the same as last year, Ogden Pond, but the other 2 are different from what he proposed last year. And then the other piece to it is we've looked at the entire village, and we have another bunch that will be coming in the future. But this is the big ones and the expensive ones.
I just love that it proves it's not a no, it's just we need more information.
Yeah, right. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, I know the mayor's very committed to improving the water quality in Quogue, and I think it's great to take this comprehensive view of the whole village and come to us with these projects, so thank you.
And not much different than what we've done for the village of Southampton and other places as well. So we're really trying to look at it as a whole and then put it together.
Thank you.
Questions?
Thank you.
Yeah. No. I like it.
You live well.
And the next application is, and the last is the Living Shoreline Restoration Writers Retreat at the Steinbeck House.
Hello.
Hello.
Hi, Diana.
Hi. Thank you, Town Supervisor Moore and council members. My name is Diana Howard, and I'm co-president of the Steinbeck House Advisory Board. I'm really sorry I can't be there in person, but I was diagnosed with bronchitis yesterday, so you're probably much better off with me in my home and not there with you. But we're thankful that you are considering our application for $14,000 for a feasibility study of installing a living shoreline at Steinbeck House at 2 Bluff Point Lane. The property is situated on Upper Cove and Morris Cove in Sag Harbor. And for those of you who've been to the property, you know that much of the property is bordered by water. So there's a bulkhead that covers part of the property. There's significant erosion on either side of the bulkhead and just significant erosion in general on the shoreline. In fact, the erosion is so bad that we're in danger of losing trees there. We believe that the installation of a living shoreline there will serve an example also for other property owners on the Upper Cove. The living shoreline, if it was installed, would sequester carbon, filter nitrogen, and would feature a saltwater fringe marsh. The living shorelines work well in low to moderate energy wave environments, and that's what we have in Morris Cove. So we think that it would work very well there. In addition, you can see that grass is sort of wanting to grow on the edge of the property, so we think that it would work well. This proposed project would assess the feasibility of a living shoreline at the property, and then would take care of the design of a shoreline of about 150 yards in length on the southwest side of the Steinbeck property overlooking Morris Cove. It would also hold back sediment and road runoff that would otherwise wash into the cove in wet weather, and would help expand marine habitat in the coves above Sag Harbor. If the application is granted, Hearst Coastal, the consulting firm, would assess the feasibility of the living shoreline there. They would design the project, and this grant would take care of much of the permitting. Cornell Cooperative has agreed to review whatever plans that First Coastal came up with before we would move into a second stage. And the second stage, which would be distinct, would be to install the living shoreline. One of our board members, Mark McIntyre, is going to help us with this project. He has worked for his entire life as an environmental lawyer, and from 2018 through September of 2023, he was the director and general counsel of the New York City Mayor's Office of Environmental Protection. So he's well versed in these kind of projects, and he was the one who has talked to some of people that he knew at Cornell Cooperative who said that they would review any plan that First Coastal came up with for us. But he would be the person on the board who would really shepherd this through for us if the grant is approved. And I'm happy to answer any questions.
Sounds like a good idea, good way to get started.
Thank you, Diane. I know you and I have discussed this extensively, and we know that the town, as well as members of the community, we have a significant investment there. This is a writer's retreat, and we also have folks who visit the Steinbeck's home, and there's a desire to stabilize the shoreline in an environmentally responsible way, and to act as an example, possibly, to other folks in the Upper Cove as to how to stabilize a shoreline and recreate a fringe marsh, which would benefit the habitat.
That's right. I mean, we're hoping to be an example, an environmental example, as well as the writers' retreat.
Very good.
So I just have, maybe you know the answer to this. Why was the NRB at the Steinbeck House the applicant was a Sag Harbor Partnership, and then this one is the Writers Retreat LLC.
Because when the earlier application was put in, it was put in by the Sag
Before
Harbor
then.
Partnership that did in fact own it at that time, but now it is switched over.
Okay.
So we actually have two applications, one for the biofilter for the septic system, and the other is to possibly create a plan or this feasibility plan for a living coastline.
But now that it's the Writers Retreat LLC, they'll pretty much both be funded to that.
Correct. Correct.
That's right. The partnership transferred the property to us after we got formed and incorporated and have our own 501c3.
Mm-hmm.
All right, well, very good. Thank you for
Thank
being
you.
with us today.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay, well, that wraps up the presentations, and now we have our public portion. Is there anyone who wishes to speak at that? Kevin, is there anyone on Zoom for the public portion?
There's no one on Zoom.
I'm sorry, Stephanie, did you want to say anything else about the applications that we just heard, or process?
The committee reviewed obviously all of these in some detail. We reached out to applicants to get answers to certain questions we had, and I think we're satisfied with our recommendations for funding on each one of these. Looking forward to some of these projects in particular, because I think they will go a long way to fostering additional projects for water quality in the future. So.
Mm-hmm. Thank you.
Thank you for your work.
Thank you.
And thank you to the Stephanie. Thank you to the board. I really, this has been a couple of years now that you've been using the rubric model, and I think it works well and informs us quite well too. So I know it's a lot of work.
Yeah.
Yeah, it is, but it's kind of fun too.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
It's worth it.
Please let the committee know how much we
Yes,
appreciate
thank
their
you.
efforts.
We will. Thank you.
Okay, Jackie, did you want to tell us anything else?
Yeah, actually, I just wanted to also thank the town board for your time today and accommodating the special meeting. I think this went really smoothly, having these all on, independently, so we can focus on water quality matters. And then also to extend my sincere thanks to Stephanie Davis, who's the chair, and the full water quality committee, because we do meet about every 2 weeks, and this is a lot of information to go through, and they really are very diligent and detailed. So we have had, lots of conversations and recommendations, and also Emily Abstration, who presented today in my absence. Thank you. But she does a lot of the back and forth and tracking these applications and getting answers to the questions that the committee has. So I just wanted to thank everyone.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you.
Very good. Thanks. Well, and there's nobody here for public portion, so I move to close public portion.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
And I also move to close the hearing.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Special.